If Tino, if you
Yep.
can raise a bit the volume of your microphone.
I try to speak closer to my microphone. Is it better now?
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Better. Better. It's better.
So, guys, welcome to the Future of Waste program. The agenda of today is that we'll talk about how local authorities manage waste, then how you have to investigate about like civil solutions for waste management. We'll talk about cultural habits, how to write and share the synthesis of the local context, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming for next week, and we'll have some spare time for question and answers. So first of all, I begging you, please try to answer the form and to do the homework we provide to you, because as I said, everything you will learn on the field through your use case and through the questions. So there are not so much videos to watch, but it's really important to try and do the homework we provide to you, because it's only through that homework that you'll make like significant progress. Like I'll start talking about how to analyze the local context, because there's no use trying to settle good practices if you don't understand what are the specificities of the place you're working in. I'll take a little example that I will go through throughout this call. It's a slackline festival I organize in Burgundy. So slacklining is about like putting a line between like two cliffs and like walking on it. And I organized like it was quite a small event. It was only 200 people and like 200 visitors, and it was in the countryside in in the middle of France. It's called La Bourgogne. And what I first did is I tried to understand the different scales and the different policies at those different scales. Because, for instance, this festival happens in Western Europe, where people have specific habits, in a rural region called Burgundy, and in that specific region, the responsibilities as far as waste collection and treatment is concerned goes to municipalities. But most of the time, those municipalities, they don't have enough like clout, enough money to handle the waste themselves. So what do? They group, they do intercity groupments, and so that it helps them to mutualize some of the infrastructures and some of the services. So I typed on a browser who was responsible for that, and I found that the organism that is both public and private that handles the waste locally was called Beaune Côté Sud. Beaune is a big city near which the festival happened. And then I contacted them, and since what I asked them is I asked them to send me a report, an annual report of 2017 about how much waste they collected, where do they put the waste in. And it's really important because in each specific locality, you will have different waste treatment options. For instance, as far as glass is concerned, the glass is taken only something like 60 kilometers away from my location. So it made sense like to collect properly glass and to send it to the recycling plants. But in other French region and maybe in Quito, it's not the same because maybe the glass recycling plants is like very, very distant. And it might also like have a big influence on the kind of solution that you will then recommend to your hotel, restaurant, or for your event. Because if, for instance, you have to take the glass 500 kilometers away so that it can be blown and melted and reused, then it might be more interesting to do like waste prevention as far as glass is concerned. So check the different scales and the different infrastructures that are available around you. Um, no, 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 no. On the even more specific scale, maybe you will work in a specific municipality or in a specific resort where they have specific rules. For instance, the place where the Slackline Festival happened is under natural protection, is a natural protection area called Natura 2000. And it meant that they have a specific regulation as far as any event that can take place in this region, because like there's a lot of like kind of rare birds and some kind of insect and stuff like that that they had to protect. It meant that we had to be particularly cautious with not leaving any cigarette butts or waste behind, because it could have endangered like species. So as I said, like you have to find the different scales and the different infrastructures and policies regarding those different scales. It's also interesting because when I contacted Bonne Côté Sud, which is the intercity organism that deals the waste locally, I also got the chance to understand that they got subsidies from regional and national, from national and regional level, and the money they spend it in buying some reusable bins and some reusable cups that they can lend for free for event organizer. So by trying to better understand the data about how much waste is produced locally, I also had an opportunity to have free services. So maybe there are some stuff that you can have for free, like we had waste collection and waste treatment for free. And we even had an opportunity to have like waste segregation bins and even eco cups for free. So I went with my car and I borrowed this from them. And they also sent me, you can see that depending where you are, the waste segregation policies are very different because, for instance, in France, there are different kind of factories and each factory is not able to recycle necessarily the same thing. So it means that in every region, you have different waste segregation rules, and it's really important to respect that because like you might like lose a lot of time if you try to do waste segregation that is not um, that does not match with how do they work locally. I even got an opportunity, and I encourage you to do so, to maybe visit because they often like sometimes like once every semester they sometimes make like visits to the waste recycling plants, and that's super interesting to better understand where the waste goes. Like for instance, I learned that apart from some what can be composted or recycled, a lot of the residual waste, we call that, is sent to a sanitary landfill. It's a sanitary landfill. It's not an open landfill, but it's a sanitary landfill. It's a landfill just the same. So it was all the more interesting also to understand that every waste that I prevented was not going to be buried for centuries. And that is something that you can later on communicate with like both your with all your stakeholders, like the festival goers, but also the partners, the suppliers. So that's something that will be your third job is to spend some time on the internet to understand how much waste people produce locally, where are the waste recycling facilities, and if waste is not like collected properly, where does it end? Where does it go? Does it go to a landfill? Does it go to incineration? So you have on the third week a link to the Waste Atlas. The Waste Atlas is something that is done by the UN, and you even have apps that you can download on your phone when you can localize most of the incinerators or landfill or recycling plants, and that will help you get data about how much people waste produce in your locality. This will also help you to understand the habits, the cultural habits of the people. Like it might be interesting to understand that, for instance, like Brazilians, they tend I would take more rather like Lebanese example. Lebanese people, they do not produce they produce something like half of what Europeans produce in kind of waste, and something like 60 to 70% of the waste is organic. So it's more interesting to put more attention on organic treatment and collection rather than on plastic. If in the place you're living in, people have tends to produce more organic waste than plastic waste. So in many cases, as I said, local authorities, they can provide services. I had the chance, for instance, that, and that applies for all the people, and there are plenty of them right now who works in France. Um, at some point during your event or for the restaurant or hotel, if the collectivity, the local authority consider that the amount and the typology of waste that you produce is similar somehow to what an household could produce, they can collect and treat your waste for free. This is exactly what happened in my festival. So I didn't need to hire the services of anyone because since we only produce like something like 200 liters of recyclables, those recyclables were taken care of by the municipality because we didn't produce much. But that depends on the policy of the local authority. So please check If it's not written on their website, you can call, and some people might answer you and give you the precise answer. By calling them, you will also get opportunities maybe to do like further partnership, and they might be interested in supporting the initiative that you're trying to implement right now. But if, and that's sometimes the case, that's the case in Brazil, that's the case maybe, I guess, in India and in other places, you will not find any like, I would say, satisfactory option for waste treatment in your locality. Because, like for instance, in southern France, a lot of the waste is not well treated or well segregated. So it might be more interesting to resort to the services of either an NGO or a company that do stuff better. So to help you through that task, we have almost 300 entries in our open source database on our website, futureofwaste.org, on the share tab. You can click on the link, check it here, and you can filter according to the locality and according to the kind of waste that you want to deal with. You can filter and check if there are some, if there are already some NGO or company that provide services of waste collection, treatment, reusal, or stuff like that. But it might you might find nothing in your locality. So what I encourage you to do is also to check the video from Spark News, and they give you some insight and some advice to look by yourself on the internet. What are the active civil sector players in your locality that might provide services? And if you find some of them that are not yet registered on our database, please add them. The idea is that we're something like 100 following this MOOC. If each and one of you add something like 5 new entries to that database, we will have 500 new entries in the database, and that's good because like it will make potentially more business for those small players that need to scale up. It will help also make sense volunteer to maybe try to make a workshop to help those innovators, and it will give them also visibility if some entrepreneurs want to better understand the sector and the options that are already available. Last but not least, it's something that is often unheard of, but like 1% of the world population lives by collective waste in an informal way. So I'm talking about the waste pickers. Javier knows that because like he had some workshop about recivechi, but a lot of people are collecting, even in France. Sometimes like you put your furniture on the sidewalk, and before the city services comes to collect it, and often they bury it, some other people might come and take it and try to repair it or sell it second hand. So please try to acknowledge the fact that there are people living in the street that have no other option to live than taking this waste, and they often recycle and reuse far better than what municipal services do. In Brazil, for instance, which is not well known for its waste management policies and for its lack of corruption, there's a lot of waste pickers. Their name is they're called catadores, and there's a video on the website about how to help catadores. And in Brazil, for instance, they got a higher recycling rate for cans than in Norway or so-called super developed countries. So those guys are super efficient, and please try to take them into account while considering resorting to the services of other players. Last but not least, I want also you to take into consideration the cultural habits. So you might not implement the same solution when you're in France or in Brazil. Like as I said earlier, what really struck me when I was in Brazil is that people like they never like take a sandwich before without a napkin. I don't know why, but like Brazilian people, they fear of like getting their hand dirty with food. So they always use a lot of napkin, which means that you have to take also the cultural habits and considerations into account. Otherwise, your solutions you will implement might not work. So please make a little bit of inquiries about how people like behave, how people react, with what can be acceptable or not for them. I would just take an example, like for this little festival that I had, those guys they are doing cliffhanging. So mostly they like to, like nature is their playground. They really like to, and just like surfers, they want to keep nature clean. So it was really easy to convince them. Everybody who was doing camping, like we distributed them 2 bags so that they can separate recyclable from non-recyclable. But most of them already had brought their own like portable ashtrays and bags. So it was really easy to implement some steps. But on the other end, what was interesting is that while visiting the recycling plant, I learned that people from Burgundy, locals, they do not recycle well at all. They're really bad at recycling. So the public that should have which paid particular attention was not especially the people who came here to do sports. It was more the visitors who came to the events more for the fun and for the music. So we put more emphasis in sensibilizing those people than on sensibilizing the climbers, let's say. So be aware of the fact that you might have like specific populations that have specific habits and comportments, and please adapt. And maybe you will have different solutions for different kind of public that will go to the same event or for the same restaurants. Um, on the on the website, you will find that I wrote an example of the little report I wrote and that I sent later on to the local authorities about how we manage the waste. And you can get inspired by that to try to make a little synthesis about how it works locally. So the question, the big question, but I'm repeating myself a little bit, but like it's quite important, is like how do people behave? What are the waste segregations policies locally? Where, when the waste is segregated, where does it go? Does it go to landfill or incineration? What are the local legislation? Is there something like about nature protection? Is there some help you can benefit from local NGOs? What are the services you can get from local authorities, NGOs, or maybe from waste pickers? And try to not only write the synthesis, but also send it to your peer project. Last week, not everybody was there, but I emphasize the fact that I will not, there are something like 50 projects going on which you're working, and I will unfortunately not have the time to go through all of them. So what I'm asking you is that maybe later on by mail, Skype, Messenger, WhatsApp, whatever, if you do not have a peer project yet, please try to select within the list I sent you the peer projects you want to work with, and those people they will read your synthesis, and then they will learn how waste is managed in another part of the world, and on the other end, you will check upon them. So it's a good opportunity to better understand how it works, and so that other people maybe can ask you questions if something seems unclear. And once this is done, please also share it as a comment on the Facebook group, so that also, and ask also all your questions, all your doubts, and all your problems, because something like Juliette did, for instance, she was asking me about how to compost locally, and it turned out that many other people wanted to have a training about how to compost. And so during week 5, I think I'll do an online training about how to compost. So every problematic that you have, other people around the world that are following the same MOOC might have them too. So please share them and do not keep them for yourself, or just send it to me, because I will make like little peer groups with people that have the same problematics, and I will try also to mobilize the right expertise within my network so that you get the proper answers. And once this is done, so you have to understand where you're working so that you may like put in place solutions that are relevant. And for next week, what you can already do is try to set up a meeting with event organizer, with a hotel or a restaurant owner, so that you can have a 1 hour, at least, I think at least 1 hour is necessary, a 1 hour interview. Because next week, what's going to happen is that you're going to request a 1 hour interview, and then you go and try to understand what kind of waste is produced in that kind of event, where is the waste produced, why, in which amounts, and you will have to separate. You have three different sources of information. First, the interview. You don't have to get super precise data about how much waste is produced, but it's interesting to know, for instance, if you're working in a restaurant, that they're filling weekly something like 600-liter bins of recyclables every week, or they produce that much amount of that much volume of waste approximatively. So it might happen that the guy or the girl you're interviewing do not have all the information. So please also take the contact of other people that might have the information, maybe the cleaning person. So this is the first source of information. It will be the interview. Second source of information, it may be the data. So in a restaurant, if they buy every month 1,000 cans of Coca-Cola, they might end up, they are likely to end up with 100 cans, empty cans of Coke. So it's the same thing. So you might ask for invoices, or maybe they already pay the services for waste collection. And most of the time, waste collection services, they give invoices, and it will help you to have insight about the volume of the weight of the waste that is produced. And last but not least, you can do just like this girl with a watermelon. You can do a little bit of dumpster diving. So I end up with that other example again of a restaurant. What I did is I did that with a restaurant, and I stayed from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. So I had an opportunity to witness two services of dishes, and I started to count how much of the plates were delivered empty, how much food scrap they had while cooking, how much plastic waste people left with. So it's if you do not have enough data with the interview and with the invoices and accountability documents, you might just like stay and look and check by yourself. And last but not least, you have a grid that you have to fill. You That grid is quite exhaustive. It's because some of you I know are really like consensus, but you do not have to fill all the stuff. So in case you do not have enough information, you can just have a guess. Because, for instance, you will not be able to measure because it's the first edition of a festival, for instance. So you don't know how much waste is going to be produced. So what you can do is you can also ask to another person that already has organized a festival that is quite similar to the one you're organizing, and ask them about the volume of waste that was produced during that festival. So if you do not have precise data, no big deal. You can make estimations. Like, for instance, in France, you can say how much cigarette butts. There is almost never any data about how much cigarette butts are thrown. So you can say that there were 200 people, one French people out of two smokes, and smokes 10 cigarettes a day, let's say. So you can guess that there was something like 1,000 cigarette butts that was produced in the festival, that it was really worth like distributing portable ashtrays. Basically, that's it. So now I'm going to look at the online conversation, and I'm open to any question of yours, guys. About composting, there are many ways. I have one that is really simple to implement at home if some of you want to know. Charlotte, yes, please share your knowledge about composting. And for the other people, during week 5, I'll make a 1 hour online training about composting. Talk about what we tell. Okay. Is there anyone who has another question? You can write it or tell it out loud. Is everybody okay?
Mm.
It's like, I'm good, thank you. Okay. So maybe you're shy and you do not dare to ask your question right now, but as I say to you, I'm available 7 days a week, 24 hours per day. I will not necessarily answer right away, but I will be glad to get your questions, your doubts, and if you need any help because you don't understand how to fill the grid, you don't know where to on the internet where to find the data, I'd be more than glad to help because I have a lot of resources and a lot of friends that are really knowledgeable about waste. So please don't stay with your doubt and share your questions. Okay, guys, thank you so much for participating, and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye bye. Just one sec before you leave. Uh, can you try to turn out your camera because I tried to make a little turn on your camera. Sorry, I tried to make a little capture. Finir vidéo. Perfect. 1, 2, 3, and I'm taking a photo. Laura Lévric, Charlotte Bouillon, Claire, Sophie, and once again, it makes sense. Only girls, 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 girls everywhere. It's funny because we are there's a company board that makes sense, and there's only girls. Like we are 70% of girls, and it's quite there's a glass ceiling for boys. It's the totally opposite of the other world. Okay, the photo has been taken. Thank you everybody for participating, and see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye bye, Kat and Valeria. Ciao.